This is the I Love Success podcast. I'm Peter Jarboh, and I have made a vow to myself to help as many people as possible to achieve their dreams. Let's get started.
All right.
Hey guys, and welcome back to the I Love Success podcast. For people that know me, I always like to communicate in person. Obviously, things have changed, and I've decided to change as well. We need to adapt and overcome. I'm a martial artist. That's what we do to survive and thrive. Today, I have a past guest, a man that I just love. He's such a great inspiration. He's an actor, but also a fellow podcast host of the 10,000 No's podcast. Today, we're going to share real action-packed 20-25 minutes talking about mindset from an actor's perspective, but also what he have learned from talking to so many people. So welcome, Matthew Del Negro.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Peter. Always fun talking to you. You're right, though. It's better in person, but this is actually, you look like you're in a clear picture to me. And it also, you're getting me hungry. I want like some good coffee. Whatever's happening behind you looks really good to me.
Yeah, this is my virtual Cuban cafe.
Oh, okay. You tricked me.
Yeah, so it looks really cool, and it actually tricked one or two. So Matthew, I just want to talk to you about mindset, what you have learned, and just kind of share with the audience. Everybody's going through a lot of things right now, and I know you had a little bit of a homeschooling situation right before this. Can you just talk about how you're dealing with being at home all the time, homeschooling, and all of that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, for me, the joke when COVID first hit was, I was like, it's not that different for me because as an actor, really you're out of work a lot. Even if you're a working actor who works what appears to be a lot, there's a lot of downtime. So I am used to having time between gigs where I'm doing a lot of work on my podcast, on all of these other ventures. And then also, if you're like right now, I just happen to be on a show, but usually so I'm contracted and we were supposed to still be shooting now into the summer. But usually when you're not working, I'll always say for an actor, you're almost doing more work looking for work than you are when you're actually, when you're working, at least you're getting paid for it. Everything you're doing is going toward this particular goal, which is going to happen. Whereas a lot of the time, your work, if it's for an audition, the chances are you won't get that audition, but you have to put all the same work into it. So this is not that new to me, although the homeschooling is new. And this morning before we sat down to talk, we had a little hiccup, and it's just it's a whole new world. I mean, first just getting acclimated to how the various schools, my daughter and my son are in two different schools, so what the programs are, it's slightly different. So just getting on board and figuring out what is working, like how it works, what's expected. Then I've got two different personalities in my kids, and that's a whole can of worms that we could open. And you talk about mindset, I'm like, oh my God, I like to think that I'm like, I have this podcast where we talk about mindset, and I have my own theories on it from my own sports background. And then, your kids may or may not buy into your system. So if you could read between the lines right now, at least one of my kids is not buying into my system.
You're a modern day sensei right now, Matthew.
Oh my God. Someone please, those old commercials when we were younger, Calgon, take me away. That's what I feel like right now.
I love it. The truth of the matter is I think we all in this situation, but also in the situation of life, especially for big dreamers, is the practice of patience. So can you just talk about that? What have you learned about patience in becoming a successful actor, but also from speaking to a lot of people about patience?
That's a great question, particularly right at this moment with this, talking about the homeschooling, because I feel like as an actor, And before that, as an athlete, I've always been very patient. I've always had my eyes on the prize. I've been, I could chip away, kind of keep my goal in sight, and slowly but surely get closer and closer to the goal. It's always felt very slow for me in both of those fields. I felt like as an athlete, um, I was never as good as I wished I would be. And as an actor, I feel like I'm probably more talented as an actor than I was as an athlete, but still it's this kind of ever elusive thing to get to where I want to be. So it's always slow. And I feel like I've had patience, and I kind of mentor young actors, and we'll talk to them about that. I'll say, you see all these in this space, in the podcast space, there are always in entrepreneurial space, there always is like, top 5 things to do this, this, and this. And it's like, I'll sometimes see that in my field. I'll see, teachers, acting teachers that are holding themselves up as, an authority of some sort. And they're like, the 5 things you need to do to get to this. And I take it with a grain of salt. One, I'll go look those people up and realize they haven't done much themselves. And then I'll always say to people, look, here's my advice. This is what I did. This is what some friends did. These are the general tenets that I think you need to live by. And they're all things that you as a martial artist probably live by as well, which it's, discipline, vision, all of those things. But then I'll say, you're going to do all of those things, but there's going to be so much out of your control that you need to have, again, what you talked about, which is patience. You need to do this. You need to envision the best, but when the best doesn't come right away, you can't crumble. You need to remind yourself how far you've come. Remind yourself that if you keep doing the right things, eventually things open up, as they have for me. I've been very fortunate, but it's been a long, long time, and it really requires patience. And when I think about it in terms of with my kids, I'd like to think I'm a teacher at heart. I'd like to think I'm patient at heart. And it's just, it's amazing to me how I could be like like the cartoon character that goes like red all the way up and then there's steam coming out the top. Cause I'm like, I just, it's interesting when it's with me and with my own goals, very patient. And then I can see with my kids, I will get frustrated when they are not, it's not about ability, it's about focus. And maybe that is ability. Maybe I'm forgetting that when I was that age, I didn't have the focus that I have now. I'd like to think I did, but maybe I didn't. And so maybe I'm impatient in that way.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because I'm coaching people in karate as well. And one thing that I've recognized is that when people are similar to me, I'm good at coaching them, but when they're not, I'm not as good of a coach, which means that I have a lot to work to do, because a good coach or a good teacher can understand that we're different and we have different needs and kind of tap into that, right?
Yeah. And you're maybe you're putting your finger on something. Maybe I'm not as good of a teacher as I thought I was. And the other thing is when it's like, people always joke around about, don't go, if you go into business with your spouse or you go into business with your brother, it gets entangled in emotions and a lot of things that are outside of the business that will hang over. And I'm just thinking like, what is it, as we're talking, I'm thinking like, what is it with my kids that will, why is it that I'm not as patient? And I think it's because there's something, I'm just thinking through this real time right now. There must be something in it that is threatening to my ego in some level. Like, well, they're not, if they're not getting it, what is that? There must be. I never thought of it, but it's like, it must be like, I'm thinking that reflects on me in some way if they don't get it. So you got to get it. And I wouldn't think that I'm that kind of parent. Who I don't think I'm like the pushy kind of parent who's going like, my kid's the greatest, or and yet that impatience, I think, somehow is hooked into something along those lines of like, why don't you get it? Why isn't it easy for you to do this? Everybody else is doing it. That kind of a thought pattern, you know?
Yeah, that's why I think if you have a gift, give it away, because when you teach other people, you learn so much about yourself as well, and you evolve. And I'm curious too, because I know you said like you're always looking to move forward, and you always see yourself, even though you come very far in your life, you're in your mind, correct me if I'm wrong, it feels like you have so much more to grow. And I'm the same way. Uh, can we just talk about that? Are you at the same time, by having these amazing goals and growth goals for more knowledge, more talent, and more better performances, can you enjoy the ride uh, on evolving? Because I have a problem with that sometimes, that I feel like, hey, other people see me as good, but for me, I'm just that small little karate kid, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I would say, it's intermittent, how much I'm enjoying it. But I would say the, the, the podcast has been really great for me, for my soul, really, because one, you sit down with other people, face to face, and you hear their stories and you're so inspired. And you're like, God, this person actually did this thing that I read about in books, but they actually did it. They're sitting right here and they did it. And then I'll be on someone else's podcast answering questions. And I think what's happened by telling my story, by the way, how are you? Are you hearing like a saw over there? My neighbor, do you
No,
want me to close a window, or is it sounding okay?
I don't hear it.
Um, there's construction going on. So, I think by telling my story through the podcast, and through now a book deal came through the podcast. So I told it in that way,
Oh, congrats.
which will come out. Thank you. Yeah. Which will come out in October. But, and then going as a guest on other people's shows, all of a sudden you start to tell your story and you go, oh, okay. I have done a few things. I've also, and that makes me acknowledge it. Like, I really do think I go, I'd like to think that I have a pretty fair view, an assessment of what I've done. I'm not sure, maybe I don't, but I feel like I'm guessing I will never feel like, oh, I've done everything that I want to do, because I have so many things that I want to do that I don't know. I don't know if that'll be possible. I'll always be striving, because when I get there, I'll probably put something else out in front of me. That's just the way I'm built. On the other hand, I do feel at this point in my life, like I feel like, okay, I'm proud of some of the things I've put together. The recent years, I'm proud of some of the work I've done as an actor. I'm so grateful for some of the shows I've been a part of. Um, this podcast, I'm super proud of it, because I created it from nowhere, and it's something that's mine. And that I have a sense of accomplishment with it. But even with that, I brought someone on recently who's helping me with kind of back of house stuff. And I'm realizing just how flawed my whole system was in the first place, because we're kind of restructuring, and even things that maybe you're good with, but I wasn't, like SEO, search engine optimization, and all these things that are integral to growing something online that I just paid very little attention to. And for me, there's a joy in learning that, though. Like, that's so I would say, yes, I can enjoy the ride. For me, the enjoyment is the learning, and it is the kind of the striving and the getting better. And then once in a while, there are these moments where you have these little kind of these little plateaus that are like a tiny little resting place. Like last year, a year ago, actually a year ago, my wife's birthday, April 12th, but of 2019, the Netflix show that I did, Huge in France, came out. And I remember there was one of these
By
ones
the way, you
that
were
I was
great
so
in that
proud of.
show.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks.
I love
It
your
was,
part.
I was so proud of it. Thanks. Yeah. Yeah. It was one of my favorite parts. It was a comedy, which is rare for me to do. And it was just so much fun. And I remember when that came out, we consciously decided to celebrate it and do a screening. A friend of ours has a club and we had a bunch of people there. And it felt like a celebration where I was really just like, I'm taking this in.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't happen that often that you love something this much and that you're this big of a part of it. And I took it in and I'm so glad I did. And then it was really well received. And then it didn't, you know, like a month later, it didn't get a second season,
Yeah.
which was a shock to everybody. And you're like, well, thank God I celebrated it when I did, you know?
Yeah, I think we should celebrate more, and I'm working on that. Why not celebrate things twice? Like, let's say you get a deal, an acting deal for a big part. Who cares if it falls through if you celebrate it once? At least in that moment you were happy, right?
Yeah, that's what I always say. It's like you're gonna get kicked in the, you know, I don't know what the audience is, but you're gonna get kicked in the nuts
Yeah.
again at some point. So why not, when you get these victories, at least celebrate them? And no, it's not like you're saying, oh, this is it, I've arrived, I'm never gonna have any struggles again. But you're going, no, I may as well, you know, take a bow for 2 seconds at least. And then know that, like, you know, the next moment I may be getting kicked again, but you at least have this to kind of prop you up as a moment that you can go, okay, I did that, and now I'm going to go do it again. You know, I had another podcaster that I became friends with. She has a really big podcast, and she had a 100th episode party at her house. And she had all these people there, past guests and everything, and people played music and people got up and read. And it was like a real old school, kind of reminded me of growing up. Like, I remember saying to her, like, I was so happy to be a part of it. And I thought it was so cool that she celebrated it. You know, I don't think enough people do. And we all talk about like the grind and this and that. And it's, you know, I'm one of those people that talks, I think, a lot about chipping away and grinding and all of that. And yet, as I get older, I also go, yes, that is very important. Um, and also, I do think you do need to breathe and look around and celebrate and just kind of like listen to the birds chirp and smell the roses. And maybe that's something that's great that's coming out of this whole pause, as terrible as it is, because people are going through horrific things right now. The people who are not in the crosshairs of the disease are, I think, a lot of people I've spoken to experiencing this kind of silver lining of taking time and slowing down and, you know, looking around and questioning what they're chasing so hard in the first place, you know?
You know, Matt, life is joy, right? And I'm a big, like, I'm a hard worker because I see myself as a warrior. In Japanese you say bushi. And when you are following bushido, which is the way of the warrior, you are very disciplined. And when you say something, it's like it's already done. And those are parts of me that are integral, but also I I can't say how much I admire when I see a kid play soccer, just for the sakes of playing soccer, you know? It's not about the winning. It's not about like looking the best or being the best. It's about being in that moment. And no one can take that away from you. Even if you have a podcast with one listener or 10 million listeners, if you have that mindset or whatever you do. So I agree with you. Right now, we have a chance to kind of slow down and look at our lives and say, hey, what is really important?
Totally agree. Yeah. And that is really, it's the joy of doing it. That's, I think you just put your finger on something that was why this podcast was so good for me. When I started, I didn't start it with any kind of strategy business wise. It was purely to save. It was purely really to save my soul. I felt like I was at a point where I was getting crushed by my business, even though people wouldn't have known that from the outside. I was working, but there were things that were happening internally where some of the things I was working on weren't really fulfilling me. Um, they weren't bringing me as much joy as they had in the past. I felt like I had a lack of control. And so I started this thing, but from a business standpoint, I started it like a complete bonehead, but that wasn't my goal with it. My goal was not business wise. It was inspiration. It was artistic. It was personal. And by doing that, I found joy. By finding joy, I started to attract people to me, like people that were, I've been so lucky, the people I've been able to interview. By just being around them, my mindset got even better. By accomplishing something that I said I was going to do, I got more confidence. As I went on, I figured out, oh, that was kind of idiotic the way you did it. So I tweaked it. It got better. And then all of a sudden it kind of did get better business wise. Then, like I told you, it led to a book. Then now it's leading to these other things that we're going to roll out that are more like online communities and online courses. And in my mind, I think that this is going to end up proving to be one of the greatest business ventures of my lifetime. And I can't back that up yet because it's not yet, but I can see it now.
You can see the
But
vision.
it didn't matter in the beginning. It was more like what you were saying about watching a kid play soccer. Like I just liked talking to people, and that's all I did. I gave myself an opportunity to do what I liked, what I found joy in. And then when you have joy doing something, I think people want to be near you when you're really, really dialed in, and people can tell, they can sense that there's no ulterior motive, that you actually just love this thing. They just they want to be a part of it. They want to help you. And that's kind of what has happened with it. And I think what is continuing to happen. So it's yeah, like finding out where your joy is. Yeah.
No, I love that. It's pretty cool. I don't know if you watched Highlander, but having a podcast, I almost feel like I watched Highlander when I was a kid, and I remember when
No.
he cut off the head of his opponents, and all their strength went into him, and I kind of feel that with a podcast, like when every person you meet, you get to learn a couple of things from them and download that into your system. And the cool part, you get to share this with the world. So someone that's gonna maybe take a walk and listen to this conversation might get one thing to improve the joy in their life. And how cool is it to be a part of that?
Oh, it's amazing. That's a cool way of looking at it. I don't really know. I remember the name, the Highlander, but I don't think I ever saw it. But that is how I feel. That's what I was saying about having them. I've got all these books over here on the bookshelf, and so many others that are gone now, but that I've read. And a lot of them are these kind of, strategies, mindset, all of that. It just, I've always been obsessed with how do I get better? And the difference is, yeah, when you're speaking to someone, yeah, you do feel like, I think you had Bedros on the show, right? Yeah. So Bedros is a friend of mine, and I had him on my show as well. And, it's like a guy, I actually have something of his, pinned up here that he gave me, and I have something right in front of me. There was a script I was writing, and he kind of gave me notes, and I have it right in front of me.
Awesome.
And I think of him, how successful he is, not just in business, but just as a human. He's a good guy. He's a good dad, good husband. And I go, like, there are definitely things that I do now that are a result of just being friends with him, or Jay Ferrugia, who introduced me to Bedros. There are things that you just can't help it. It's like that old, the cliche that gets thrown around so much. You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Really what we've done with the podcast is we've taken this, like the people we spend time with, not that you're, Henry Winkler I had on the show, not that I'm hanging out with Henry, but I had him on the show. We had a really nice conversation. I have this newsletter. He responded this morning and I shot him back something else. It's like, he's now in some way, not like we're best friends, but he's now in my life and he's in my head, and the things that he did that I saw from afar as a kid. Now I'm like, okay, this is a guy that I'm having a back and forth with. And how does that not influence my sense of possibility for myself?
It's incredible. And the world has gotten smaller. So I just want to encourage everybody listening to this, reach out to us. If you have someone that you look up to, someone that you want to ask them for something, do it, but do it not just to exploit someone, do it from a sense of purity and that you really want to be part of it. Matt, I know you got to go. You have 2 kids to homeschool. Last question, and then I'm going to let you go. So we're all about action. And what do you want to tell the people that have listened so far when they're done with this podcast? What should they do to get a little bit closer to their dreams?
When they've listened to this particular conversation?
Yeah.
I would say, I just did this. I now am doing these little mini solo episodes in addition to the weekly interviews, where I just kind of riff on a topic. And one of the ones that got a lot of response a couple of weeks ago, full disclosure, there's some swearing in it. It was a little more fiery than I usually get. It was called Take Action Now, Course Correct Later. And, if you're saying like, what do I think people should come away from this with? To back it up, I would say go listen to that. Just know that, if you have kids around, put earmuffs on. But the gist of that was, if you're listening to this and you feel that, if you have it, if you feel that like sense of like your heart jumps and you get excited by what we're talking about, some people may not. Some people are going to see this and go like, next. Some people who are still listening now they're excited. And what I would say is like, don't just negate that excitement and go, oh, that was a stupid idea. I just got excited while I was watching this in my little closet over here. But when I go out in the real world, people are going to laugh. No, listen to this, go listen to my thing. It'll get you fired up. I kind of yell at you a little bit and say like, there's no time, now is all you have. It's not a dress rehearsal, but go take action. You can always adjust. I just told you about my podcast. That's what I did. I hit record and I went, and you can go listen to the first episode. It's pretty, like it's not very thought out. It's just me puking on the mic. And yet here we are almost 3 years later, it's become something. And that's what I would say is just like follow that string of inspiration in whatever it is. Just follow it and don't second guess yourself so much. And one little thing before I go, I just got to mention it. You said people reach out to us if you want something, but I will give a little qualification to that. Sometimes, like a while ago, I did an episode where I said something like, you have to ask. And then some people emailed, they're like, well, you said to ask, so I'm asking you, can I? And there are people over the 3 years I have really helped. I've gone out of my way to help them. Those were the people that wrote in, not like, can I get this? Can I get something from you? They wrote in and it was just an honest, passionate email. Sometimes they offered services to me. Sometimes they just told me their story, but they not like they went way, way, way deep into it, but also not like they were like, can I get an autograph or something like, something that it wasn't surfacey. When it's surfacey, I'm like, I have no interest in even responding to you. If it's like something that's not about the substance, but if you reach out and you're really, really interested, and someone like yourself or me, we can sense it in the email. Like, really, when think about what it is you're asking. Do you just want something from the person, whoever it is? I'm not talking about just you and me, someone out there.
Yeah.
Are you just trying to get something from them? Or are you really going to like, are you like, if you have a question for someone that you put on some pedestal, did you Google it? Did you do your research? Did you do your part first before you went to them? Like, and I only mention it because people will say to me, they'll reach out, I want to be an actor. What do you think I should do? And I want to just go, hey, go listen to the friggin' podcast. I put it out for the last 3 years. I put a ton of time into it. That's my answer to your question. Did you even see that I had that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think,
I agree.
I think like, if you do it with a good heart, a good conscience, and you cross your T's and dot your I's, and then you go to people, they will help you. Because there are other people. The person who produces my show right now started as a listener halfway around the world. And she sent a really passionate email that was really smart. And I responded. A year and a half later, we're now working together. That's just because she wasn't looking for a handout, you know?
That's so true. Do the fucking work and do your research and be of value. People are looking for mentors all the time. Hey, can you mentor me? Hey, can you do that? No, you got to fucking do the work first, provide some value, and then people that are busy might notice you. That's how it works in this world.
And we've all done it. I've done plenty of things for free for no, you know, and that's you know, that's what it takes.
That's what it takes. Yeah. Matt, if people want to connect with you, where's the best way to find you?
Best way, I'd say I'm most active on Instagram. The handle is at Matty Del, MATTYDEL. And for the podcast on Instagram, it's at 10,000 Nos. So 10000 NOS. On Twitter, I'm at Matthew Del Negro, and Facebook also, LinkedIn, but I'm not as active there. And then we also have a Twitter for the at 10,000 Nos. But I'd say Instagram right now is the best place. And if people go to 10,000nos.com, you can scroll down and there's a little form you could fill in to get on the newsletter, the mailing list, which is not going to flood your inbox. It's like once a week, every Monday, I'll do a little something that I think adds value. Or you can email us at info@10,000nos.com.
It's great. And I just read your newsletter this morning. It is great. It's a lot of value, very easy to digest and read. So I would recommend that to everybody. Yeah. And Matt, thank you so much. Good luck with being a teacher today. Provide some value and maybe you'll learn something yourself.
Yeah. Maybe if there's a teacher out there that wants something from me, they can come school my kids and I'll open up everything to them.
That's awesome. Before we head out, guys, if you're still with us about 30 minutes in, we are both super grateful. My big fat mission is to help at least 10 million people in 10 years. But right now, you are the most important person to me. If you listen to this, just don't do something, take action. Otherwise, this time is wasted. Matt could have spent those 30 minutes with his kids. So I would love for you to actually take action. Email me at info@ilsuccess.com. Let me know what you're working on right now and how you're taking action. That's it. Thank you for today and talk to you soon.